Welcome to the Bible Savvy Podcast, a weekly conversation about how to understand, enjoy, and apply God's Word. It's time to jump into a new passage from the Bible Savvy reading plan.
Hey, Bible Savvy Nation, I'm here. You never know how I'm going to say it. I don't know. It's just going to pop out of my mouth. Here we go. I'm here with Courtney, and I'm here with David, and you just get to see the awkward flubs at the beginning. David, what's our question today?
Okay, guys, it's everybody's favorite time of the year, maybe?
Yeah.
It's Winter Olympics. Winter Olympics are here.
Any kind of Olympics.
Everything's cold, and apparently there are snow sports. So Winter Olympics is happening.
Olympics.
And I have a lot of opinions, but the question today is, what's the Winter Olympic sport you secretly would love to try? And even, not just try, but maybe like get good at. If you had the time and energy to like actually put into it, like what would that be?
I think either snowboarding, like, you know, half
Like
pipe
the
kind of
half-pipe,
thing,
yeah,
that kind of
yeah.
stuff.
The audio listeners really missed out on that.
That's right.
You were drawing with your finger.
With my finger, like doing. I'm like, what is that called?
What is this? It's a U.
The little U. Or speed skating, because
I
like
agree with
if
you
you were
on
good
that.
at it, like how thrilling. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I would not want to do one of the ones where you slide down a tube with nothing between you and death, but like, you know, a few pieces of plastic, a few inches of plastic. So
Yeah. Well, I'm proud that you said speed skating, because if you like speed skating, it's very similar to people running around a track.
No.
So all of that to say, aside from my encouragement,
the thing that's like running in the winter is cross country skiing, which is a miserable thing.
Which reminds me, which brings up the point. In case you are wondering, they are working on making cross country a Winter Olympic sport. If you'd like to discuss with me the reasons why it's a Winter Olympic sport, I would love to talk to you about that, because that's my nerd out moment. But so until it becomes my favorite sport in the Winter Olympics, I would say I think curling looks awesome. And I'm actually a fan of like I follow a curler on Instagram. Like there's a guy from Wisconsin, was an Olympic curler, and he's hilarious, genuinely a great follow.
That was not on my bingo card today. I follow a curler on Instagram.
I do. He's pretty fantastic.
Yeah.
But I also think it'd be so fun if you were good at it, because otherwise it's so dangerous. But to be one of those like ski jumpers, like where you come off the high jumps
and they just fly through the air,
and like I'm pretty good at it on like Nintendo, like the NES. But I'm just
amazing.
Saying.
Yeah. Okay, so I grew up in Colorado, so some of this,
so you already do these sports?
Stuff, I'm like, I'm already good at all these things, guys.
So I'm just naturally good at them.
No, there's things like skiing and snowboarding and stuff. I'm like, yeah, I did it. It's fine, whatever. It's overrated. But I would also say curling, because I've never gotten to do that.
You can do it. There's a place in Chicago where you can actually like go do it. So if we ever want to film
Bible Savvy road trip, or what would like recording on location, or like live recording at a curling event. I just think any type of activity where I could enjoy a good snack, like while I'm, like give me some buffalo chicken dip while and then I'll get my turn curling. Like it's like bowling, it's like I don't have to work that hard, but I get to compete and I don't have to like sweat and and I did play sports growing up, but something where I'm like I can just like have a good time with some buds. That seems great.
It's good. Yeah, it's good. All right.
I don't think you're making it to the Olympics if that's the level of your commitment.
But think if you were that
good,
I
can eat a hot dog,
you could just dominate your friends in something, but also jeans and a t-shirt and enjoy some food.
Oh my goodness. All right. Well, we are going to turn to our passage, and this is a hard turn this passage. Let's be honest. We're in 2 Samuel chapter 13, and I just want to give a little heads up. If you have little ears listening, this is definitely not one for little ears. Also, just content warning, there is sexual and physical assault involved in this, and it's kind of icky. So if that's not something you're up for right now, maybe there's one you skip or you come back to when you're in a time to actually pay attention to it. So we're going to be looking at 2 Samuel chapter 13. Let me give some context. The context is pretty important for understanding how we got to this point. So the book of Samuel is primarily the story of David, and the first 2/3 of the book are David's rise to power. How does he take the throne, and how does he get things going really, really well? And he's a great king. There's a reason why he's the standard. Mm-hmm. And then there is a very important story between David and Bathsheba. It's pretty famous. And it is a turning point in the entire book. It is a moment where David's rise gets its peak, and then things start to fall apart. And even just this is interesting about the book of Samuel, that there would be an ancient document where they would talk about the greatest king, the biggest hero in the country, and they would spend a third or more of the book talking about how everything fell apart and how it was kind of his fault. And this is what we're in the middle of. So one way to think about this, sorry, we're going to back up just a little bit in terms of Bible stuff. If you think of God establishing a kingdom and putting a king on the throne, one of the things God is doing is not just randomly taking care of one group of people. He's trying to restore what he was doing in Eden in the beginning. And what he was doing was he's saying, I want there to be a human ruler who takes care of the world the way I would. Mm-hmm. And so he does that with Adam and Eve in the beginning. But in Israel, he's trying to establish this will be a place with justice, this will be a place with peace, this will be all of these things that I wanted it to be in the beginning. I'll be at the center of it, and on the throne will be a human who is ruling in a way that I would approve of. And so David looks like a new Adam, but then he reaches out and takes something that was forbidden to him, which is Bathsheba. And the fallout of that looks very, very similar to the fallout in Genesis, where all of a sudden it leads to family conflict and breakdown in the country and all sorts of stuff. So we are on the downward slope of that. That story is in the past. And now we get to the impact of David's unfaithfulness and his sin and the cover-up and the murder and all that went along with it, the impact that had on his family. And it's pretty intense. Mm-hmm. So we're going to read this 2 Samuel chapter 13.
In the course of time, Amnon, son of David, fell in love with Tamar, the beautiful sister of Absalom, son of David. Amnon became so obsessed with his sister Tamar that he made himself ill. She was a virgin, and it seemed impossible for him to do anything to her. Now Amnon had an advisor named Jonadab, son of Shemaiah, David's brother. Jonadab was a very shrewd man. He asked Amnon, "Why do you, the king's son, look so haggard morning after morning? Won't you tell me?" Amnon said to him, "I am in love with Tamar, my brother Absalom's sister." "Go to bed and pretend to be ill," Jonadab said. "When your father comes to see you, say to him, 'I would like my sister Tamar to come and give me something to eat. Let her prepare the food in my sight, so I may watch her and then eat it from her hand.' So Amnon lay down and pretended to be ill. When the king came to see him, Amnon said to him, 'I would like my sister Tamar to come and make some special bread in my sight, so I may eat from her hand.' David sent word to Tamar at the palace, 'Go to the house of your brother Amnon and prepare some food for him.' So Tamar went to the house of her brother Amnon, who was lying down. She took some dough, kneaded it, made the bread in his sight, and baked it. Then she took the pan and served him the bread, but he refused to eat. 'Send everyone out of here,' Amnon said. So everyone left him. Then Amnon said to Tamar, 'Bring the food here into my bedroom, so I may eat from your hand.' And Tamar took the bread she had prepared and brought it to her brother Amnon in his bedroom. But when she took it to him to eat, he grabbed her and said, 'Come to bed with me, my sister.' 'No, my brother,' she said to him, 'don't force me. Such a thing should not be done in Israel. Don't do this wicked thing. What about me? Where could I get rid of my disgrace? And what about you? You would be like one of the wicked fools in Israel. Please speak to the king. He will not keep me from being married to you.' But he refused to listen to her, and since he was stronger than she, he raped her. Then Amnon hated her with intense hatred. In fact, he hated her more than he had loved her. Amnon said to her, 'Get up and get out.' 'No,' she said to him, 'sending me away would be a greater wrong than what you have already done to me.' But he refused to listen to her. He called his personal servant and said, "Get this woman out of my sight and bolt the door after her." So his servant put her out and bolted the door after her. She was wearing an ornate robe, for this was the kind of garment the virgin daughters of the king wore. Tamar put ashes on her head and tore the ornate robe she was wearing. She put her hands on her head and went away, weeping aloud as she went. Her brother Absalom said to her, "Has that Amnon, your brother, been with you? Be quiet for now, my sister. He is your brother. Don't take this thing to heart." And Tamar lived in her brother Absalom's house, a desolate woman. When King David heard all this, he was furious, and Absalom never said a word to Amnon, either good or bad. He hated Amnon because he had disgraced his sister Tamar. 2 years later, when Absalom's sheep shearers were at Bel-Hazar near the border of Ephraim, he invited all the king's sons to come there. Absalom went to the king and said, "Your servant has had shearers come. Will the king and his attendants please join me?" "No, my son," the king replied. "All of us should not go. We would only be a burden to you." Although Absalom urged him, he still refused to go, but gave him his blessing. Then Absalom said, "If not, please let my brother Amnon come with us." The king asked him, "Why should he go with you?" But Absalom urged him, so he sent with him Amnon and the rest of the king's sons. Absalom ordered his men, "Listen, when Amnon is in high spirits from drinking wine, and I say to you, 'Strike Amnon down, then kill him. Don't be afraid. Haven't I given you this order? Be strong and brave.'" So Absalom's men did to Amnon what Absalom had ordered. Then all the king's sons got up, mounted their mules, and fled. While they were on their way, the report came to David, "Absalom has struck down all the king's sons. Not one of them is left." The king stood up, tore his clothes, and lay down on the ground, and all his attendants stood by with their clothes torn. But Jonadab, son of Shemaiah, David's brother, said, "My lord should not think that they killed all the princes. Only Amnon is dead. This has been Absalom's express intention ever since the day Amnon raped his sister Tamar. My lord the king should not be concerned about the report that all the king's sons are dead. Only Amnon is dead." Meanwhile, Absalom had fled. Now the man standing watch looked up and saw many people on the road west of him coming down the side of the hill. The watchman went and told the king, "I see men in the directions of Horonaim on the side of the hill." Jonadab said to the king, "See, the king's sons have come. It has happened just as your servant said." As he finished speaking, the king's sons came in wailing loudly. The king, too, and all his attendants wept very bitterly. Absalom fled and went to Talmai, son of Ammihud, the king of Geshur. But King David mourned for many days for his son. After Absalom fled and went to Geshur, he stayed there 3 years.
All right. Well, the next step is observations. So we got to look at the details here. What do we see in this passage?
One of my first observations is that God's voice is not present. And it feels like in this that God has almost like he stepped back. And again, I think I know we all read this with a seriousness, but as a female reading this, that was hard to feel like God's voice is not present in this space. Yeah. And yeah, I think it's, just previous to this in 2 Samuel 12, it says the sword will never depart from David's family. Calamity will come from your own household. So again, I mean, that's an observation of what has happened. Like it's kind of the departure of God's presence in that place.
Yeah. I think it's both an absence of God's voice, but also there's no appeal to God by anybody here. Mm-mm. So even in other places in Scripture where tragic, horrible things happen, there are people who are looking and saying, what would God do, or what would God want me to do in this situation? And in this, nobody, not David, not anybody, appeals to God. Says, what would God say about this? It's not just God's absence that sort of shows like, well, this is all happening in the kind of absence of communion with God, but also no one seems to be seeking him out or looking for guidance or way to rectify it or do what's right in the situation.
Well, and I might push back on that just a little bit, and I'm not jumping down this far at this point, but where I would push back on that is Tamar saying, "Don't force me. Such a thing should not be done in Israel."
Yes.
So if I were to say there is someone who is trying to point to what the Lord's will would be, it is the woman who's eventually, defiled. I did also mark there, though, and this came out in that the Dr. Arnold interview, that it makes us long for the perfect Son of David in Jesus. And maybe I'm jumping to a conclusion, or going too far ahead in that as well. But I think the absence makes you cry out and say, okay, but where is he then? Well, we long for the perfect Son of David. We long for Jesus. And that came out in that interview. He said, specifically, he talked about hope being pushed to the future, that our hope is not in David. Our hope is now in the future king. He pushes our expectation to the future king.
One of my observations, it's not obvious, but just about polygamy in this time, I feel like I saw a clickbait title or something of some obscure pastor in some obscure town claiming the Bible actually prescribes polygamy, and it's like a classic contextual error of saying like it is there and it is clearly here, but every time it's described, it's followed by trouble and suffering and evil. And in this time, it's like, okay, what has polygamy led to? And it's like Amnon, clamoring for his half sister.
Yes. So the polygamy you're mentioning is implicit in the family structure.
Yes.
Amnon and Absalom are not from the same mother.
Right.
They're both David's sons. Tamar is from the same mother as Absalom. But so you get this weird, gross family thing going on.
Yep.
But it's one of the implicit critiques of the polygamy that's going on there. Yeah. And even to just talk about the events of this chapter, it is worth saying, and this is, it's like a basic rule from when we're reading, is that the Bible is more often descriptive than prescriptive. And we are often conditioned to say, I'm reading the Bible to see what ought to happen or for an example or something like that. And there are certainly plenty of those.
Yep.
But many times, maybe the majority of the time, the stories that we're getting about people in the Bible are simply reporting what happened. Now, there's a point for it, why we're hearing that story, but you should not assume that just because it happens on the pages of the Bible, that the author of Scripture or God himself is okay with what's happening. Yes. In fact, it might be there precisely so that you hate what's happening.
Yes.
And that's important, because there are times I've had people ask me the question, like, why isn't this explicitly condemned, this event in the Bible? Now, in this one, Tamar raises the thing, but there can be no comment from God or no comment from a prophet or whatever, and you're like, why didn't they just say God didn't like this? Well, some of it is the author saying, you feel why this is wrong, right?
Yep.
And that's where the condemnation comes in. So it's a literary technique, but it's worth noting.
Yep. It's also just, for me personally, I have a close family member who deconstructed from their faith because of this story, because it felt like, oh, this was God like allowing this versus it exposing the evil and, as you said, clamoring for the Son of David. She's since come back to faith, but it's like, that's why we need to explore this.
Yeah. And I, like, one of the reasons I'm thankful that this story is in Scripture. I mean, there's a part of me that just wishes it wasn't there. Like we talked beforehand. We thought that we had the hardest story in the Bible when we talked about that one in Judges. This is harder. But the reason I'm thankful it's there is that this is in the world. So in my family, there are stories of sexual assault. In our church, there are many people secretly, well, not hiddenly, I should say, have this as a part of their life experience. And if the Bible didn't address it, we might say, how naive is the Bible that it's not dealing with real realities in the world? And so at that level, I'm thankful that this is here, because it's not pulling punches. It's as awful as it is. What other things are we seeing here?
Yeah, there are so many things. But verse 2, there's one little word in there that really bothered me. But it says she was a virgin, and it seemed impossible for him to do anything to her. Mm-hmm. And I was like, oh, like that one little tiny word, like that word "to" is that to me, that's such a evidence of lust. It's not this is truly lust. He wants to do something to her. Mm-hmm. It just, to me, that was like, yuck. Yeah.
Well, I think my observation kind of connected with that is all of the emotions and desires of Amnon. Mm-hmm. So he fell in love with her. He's obsessed with her. Mm-hmm. And he pretends to be ill, but there's like, even that is sort of just like, and then after the assault, it says he hated her with an intense hatred. In fact, he hated her more than when he had loved her. And so this, again, this is one of those things that exposes the real reality. There are people who so objectify people, who get so fixated on what they want out of someone, that it becomes this obsessive, twisted set of emotions, a fixation, objectifying someone so that they're to be used by them or do something to them. Mm-hmm. And Amnon, the psychology of Amnon that we get here, is the kind of twistedness of sin and lust and all sorts of other things in there too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and he is representing like David's sin that got us into this mess. David has two sons, and not to jump ahead, but one represents this sin of lust and this what happened with Bathsheba, and the other one is going to represent
the sin of murder.
The sin of murder.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So I mean, this story is important when you look at that. Mm-hmm. It's really important.
Yes. Yeah.
All right. Jonadab is this supposed advisor of Amnon. Says he's son of Shimei, David's brother. That even just that phrase is repeated twice in this chapter. Jonadab, son of Shimei, David's brother, and that he was a very shrewd man. Mm-hmm. And he was like, "Oh, you look sad. Like what's good?" And he gives him this plan, which is just insane to me. And it just made me think, like, be careful who you listen to and the advisors in your life in general.
Well, look where all he shows up. Like he shows up every time there's trouble.
Yeah.
And he's shrewd, like a snake.
Right.
I mean, what do we say about shrewd people? They're like snakes.
Right. Well, okay, so this is one of those.
Sorry, not to interrupt.
No. No, we all have lots of things to say about this. There's like a feeling in this one. So I made that connection to the Genesis story.
Yeah.
It's all over. This is Cain and Abel, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like to the extreme.
Oh, it is.
Yeah. But there was someone shrewd in the garden, and it was the serpent, right? And so, like, you get all of these things that say, "Look, this is the reality of the world." Mm-hmm. Like the story of humanity is the guy who reaches out and grabs something he shouldn't, and the result of that is his family uses, abuses, murders, rapes, steals, kills each other forever after that. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so, like, this isn't just, wow, look at how twisted that family was. It's the human family that we're looking at. Mm-hmm. That's part of why we need the greater David. You know?
Yeah. Well, and in the context of the family too, and this is a general observation that I can point to certain verses as well. Yeah. I just kept going, why did David say yes to this? This is a terrible example of parenting. Yeah. David keeps saying yes to all of these. Like, why did it says the king came to see him in verse 6? When the king came to see him, Amnon says, "I would like my sister Tamar to come and make special bread in my sight, so I may eat from her hand." That's a weird thing, okay? Like, why? Why is that? And David's like, "Go do this."
Yeah.
And then later on, it's going to happen again. But I'm like, what a pushover. Like, there are where's my parenting examples in the Bible? This is so bad.
There's a serious lack of discernment and wisdom. And there was something Dr. Arnold said in that interview of just like, there is evidence throughout David's life of maybe some naivety of like, maybe overly trusting or just being unaware in certain moments of what's happening. And I've been wrestling with that too, of just like, is it unaware? Does he not want to see it? Does he believe the best in people? And this, I don't know.
So sometimes it's interesting when someone has sin of their own, the reaction can be one of two things when you see that same sin in somebody else. It is either overly pouncing on it, right? So you get on that person like crazy, and it's kind of compensating for your own shame and guilt, or not dealing with it with somebody else because, well, look what I've done, right? Like you don't want to have the hammer come on you, and so you don't put it on other people, and you also don't want the mirror reflected back like, well, Dad, what did you do? Right. And so I'm more. I don't think this is naive. I think this is David cowardly, not like he's not stepping up because of. And there's no text, but it sure seems in the subtext that there's something in his sin that prevents him from doing what's right in this situation.
Do you think they would know, his kids would know about the Bathsheba
she's married
original moment of like
they're married and Uriah's dead?
Because sometimes parents and
the whole court was there when like she didn't her baby died, right? It's
so there could be like, oh yeah, you know my story, so I can't really call you on what you're doing right now.
Yeah.
Man, oof.
Yeah. And honestly, someone who has been practiced in protecting themselves with power. Right? Like David says, I'm going to cover up my sin by having this guy murdered and manipulating with my power. Like there is something that gets replicated there of like, well, he kind of uses, like his power gets borrowed by all of his kids. And David's like, well, okay, they're kind of whatever. Like it's a bad pattern that's replicated in this family, and it comes from David.
Repeated words. There's lots of brother and sister language. They continually use and bring up the family relationship in there.
I want to observe Tamar's words to Amnon here. I actually think there's so many things about this that are very hard to explain, but taken as a whole, this is what I see. This is Tamar's humanity showing up. So there are stories that are told in a way. You think about the way the stories are told, where sometimes the victims are simply the background to the character action that's going on with the villains, right? One of the things that's very fascinating is that this gives voice to the experience of someone who is a victim of sexual assault, and the humanity that comes in that, like. She is not an object because she's someone who can speak up and say, I know what's going on here and this is not right. I find that remarkable in terms of especially ancient writing. That's the sort of thing that like you're kind of waiting until like the 21st century for like us to get, to be like, actually, the voices of victims are worth hearing. There's something here. And now, again, there are things in what she says that are very confusing to us. But the fact that she is objecting and saying, no, don't do this, and saying why it's wrong and calling it out and exposing it, and the depth of like anguish and plea that's there, we're being forced to see it, and it's important. So should I dig into the weirdest part of that statement?
I think you can. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. No.
Okay, she obviously appeals to things that make sense to us, right? This is wrong, right? We got verses in the Torah that are like Leviticus and Deuteronomy saying you can't do this, all sorts of things, disgrace, and this would be foolish and wicked and all that,
what
right?
About you?
All of this stuff. It's appeals we get.
Yeah.
But then she says this: "Please speak to the king. He will not keep me from being married to you." So she says, "Look, we could make this more legitimate, right?" And it's hard to know what to do with that. I think probably there's one of those descriptive things of this was obviously not right. We have verses in Leviticus and Deuteronomy say this is not allowed. And I think it might be a desperate like let me just get out of this situation kind of thing. I think that's the most likely explanation of it. Even if realistically that might have been something David would have allowed. Right, it would have been wrong for him, but she might have known. Yeah, some people do this, right? Like there's some situations, where this happens. But I think it's probably if I can just stop this moment from happening, maybe there's another exit. I think that's what's going on there.
Yeah. Well, and I think I felt those words as she's saying them, right? Like it's the repeated word there's wicked. Like, don't do this wicked thing. You'd be like one of the wicked fools in Israel. But she's stalling, she's panicked, she's frantic, and then she's desperate. Like that's not what she wants. But the alternative to it is what ends up happening. She's a desolate woman living in, her brother's house. And I think like we get to that line in verse 14, but he refused to listen to her. And since he was stronger than she, and you have to think like physically stronger, socially stronger, all in every way.
Yes. Yep.
He rapes her.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. Just, and then immediately, it turns to that hatred.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Another thing in here that's hard is the aftermath, where essentially she says, okay, now you leaving me is going to be worse. So this is, again, that's another one of those, like, how twisted is this? Here's what I think is going on. In that culture, in that time and place, for her to be raped like this, for her to, not be a virgin in that sense, and to like have this happen to her, jeopardizes her in terms of marriageability and those sorts of things. Now we would say, and in light of what the rest of Scripture says, that someone who is the victim of rape is not, it does not actually diminish them. They're not damaged goods. None of this is true. But she is aware of the social reality that if he casts her aside, there may be no one who picks her back up. And so she's saying, if you do this, how will I be protected and provided for in a society that will not, that I'm now more vulnerable when I go out here, and more will happen to me that is not right. So she again is desperately trying to say something like, it's not just that you've done this to me, as horrible as the event was, the aftermath of this is going to continue to affect me, and you are now discarding the responsibility of the mess you've made in my life. And so again, it's very hard for us, but I think she's addressing the reality of the situation, not what ought to have been.
Yeah. So I think, there are so many emotions going on here, but when you look in verse 17, he says, "Get this woman out of my sight and bolt the door after her." I wrote in the margin, it's as if he needs to be protected. Like he's throwing her out, and that implies to everyone around that she did something to him. Like he's hiding, he's making himself the victim. And that was like even more offensive to me. That I read that and I was like, oh my goodness. And then I have done a study on this passage before, and one of the things that they talked about was that the way that that's actually worded, "Get this woman out of my sight," is actually like, take this trash out. Like take out the trash and bolt the door after her. So in my mind, like that makes it even worse. Like he's not just saying, it's not just what he did to her. He's now saying she did something to me. She pursued me. She's a, some kind of a loose woman, whatever that looks like. That detail to me was so striking.
That's a really good, that whole paragraph there, I think, is a twisted inversion of the Joseph story. Like when Joseph is robe. Like, so she's got an ornate robe that you automatically think Joseph. We're already in Genesis territory with some of the allusions here, but Joseph is like his master's wife tries to seduce him, and he refuses and runs away, and then she accuses him as he runs out the door, and like this. But this is like the twisted parody of this guy saying, "Well, look at what it's."
Yeah.
All right, and then right after that, in verse 20, Absalom's initial response to her is confusing to me, because we obviously we don't know tone. We've talked about that. Like when you're reading text, you don't know like what is this tone, and even some of the things he's saying could be interpreted different ways. Because he says, has that Amnon, your brother, been with you? Be quiet for now, my sister. He is your brother. Like that sounds dismissive. Don't take this thing to heart. Feels dismissive. But then right after this, it does say like Absalom never said a word, either good or bad. He hated Amnon because he disgraced his sister Tamar. So initially I'm like, whoa, like there's no compassion, there's no empathy, there's no. It's like, but I don't know, but then obviously it turns into murder. So do you think it changed for Absalom, or was it like?
It is really hard to tell if he is simply holding his cards close to his chest with Tamar, or if he is alluding to Tamar. Like you could take it either way of like, don't freak out, don't do something, I got this. Like the implication is you need someone to step up. I got a plan.
Yep.
And he doesn't let on at what it is, but he's basically saying, I'll handle this.
Yeah.
Or he's playing the part, knowing he's got a plan, he's cooking something, and just sort of like, it comes across as dismissive. I don't know which it would be.
Yeah, it comes across as really dismissive. Like, don't take this thing to heart. That's impossible. I mean, that's not something, be quiet for now. Like that's what they tell people who are victims of sexual assault. That's the first thing they're going to hear. Like talk about something triggering. Like, don't say anything. Be quiet. Keep it locked down. And then she lives a desolate, like a disgraced woman. Yeah. Like, oh, yikes.
The messy part about it is that it's clear that Absalom is saying be quiet so that my plan will work. Where most people try to silence a victim because they're saying we want to protect this awful guy who did this. So it's very like it's there's just this is one of the things in some of these narratives where it's like there's so much under the surface you have to try to like ponder that it's really hard to figure out.
The other thing I noted was in verse 21, when King David heard all this, he was furious. I wrote, he was furious, but did nothing.
Yes.
Like, once again,
he
Dad,
had emotions.
What in the world?
Yep.
Like, glad you're furious, but what are you going to do?
Yeah, it's aggravating.
To fix the problem. But then we head into, starting in verse 23, again, the other part of David's sin, right? Like we just hit sexual sin and now we're on murder.
Yeah. I think the another weird parody here is Absalom when he's giving instructions to the guys like go strike him down. First of all, that's how David told his men to make sure Uriah died. But he says, have I not told you, be strong and brave? That is God's, those are God's words in other places where he's like saying to Joshua or whoever, like, haven't I told you, be strong and courageous? And it's like, this is so messed up.
Yeah. Just to backtrack a little bit, because now you're in my head a little bit, Clayton. But in verse 23, it says it starts with 2 years later.
Yeah.
And since you mentioned Joseph, so Joseph is accused by Potiphar's wife of this thing, the robe and everything. He goes to prison.
Yes.
And he's a good man in prison. He interprets the dreams and he says, hey, remember me, when you go talk to the king. And then the next line is, and 2 years later is when he finally gets freedom from this captivity.
Okay, this is deep weeds, this is Bible nerd stuff. But there are times when there are little phrases like that, that if you are super familiar, and look, we're doing Bible Savvy. I don't assume everybody's super familiar. So if you don't catch this when you're reading through, don't worry about it. Yeah. But that make you say, I know that phrase because it's kind of distinctive and it only really occurs in that one place and it brings it up. This could be one of those, I haven't done the research, but it wouldn't surprise me if that was the case.
Well, once again, King David is the pushover and, the king asks him, why should he go with you? Like, please let my brother Amnon come with us. The king says, why should he go with you? But Absalom urges him, so he sends him along. Yeah. Like, once again, terrible parenting example.
Yeah.
Have a backbone, David.
Yeah. And I'm there. It's pretty prolonged at the like last sequence here of like the confusion of like, were all the sons killed or only one? I'm not really sure what the point of that part of the story is. You know what I mean?
It's so Jonadab can jump back in. So
Jonadab can be a snake.
The snake comes back in.
But also it shows the weakness of David. Like he doesn't even have all the information. He's not acting on the right things, now that I'm just in the moment here thinking there could be some Joseph stuff, right? Like losing sons and Jacob's weeping and not, but it certainly feels like David is not in control of the situation. He's not responded well to the situation. His passive response in the first place has led to something that's utterly tragic. And it's just, so bad. And he's all emotion, no action. Again, he's weeping very bitterly, which is what Tamar does at the beginning. She weeps bitterly at the beginning, but where was David weeping at that point? Like he's furious, but like she's the only one crying at that point. Ugh. All right.
Well, this skips down towards the end there in verse 37 when it says, "But King David mourned many days for his son." I actually wrote which son.
Oh, Absalom.
Absalom's gone and Amnon is dead. Who's he? I don't know. It was just a question in my mind. Like,
we will get to explore his relationship with Absalom as we go forward because there's more to the story. Yes. It gets more complicated. Yeah. But yeah, man, this is messed up. All right, I think we just got to go to to the message part of this. So let's talk about what we get out of this. We've already explored a lot of different things, but what message do you get out?
My message was, if you want to stop generational sin, you have to speak up.
It's good.
There's a lot of silence that happens. And if you want to stop it, you have to speak up.
Yeah. Mine's fairly similar. Courage and wisdom are necessary qualities of a good leader and a good parent.
My message is this. The objectification of women leads to violence. So you see this with Tamar's own words where she's saying, will you see my humanity? Think about what this would do to me. Think about this would do to you. We need to be people. And Amnon simply using and discarding her. And the objectification leads to violence. All right. This is one of those ones where meditation is really hard. It's not like there's a verse here that's great to ponder, or you really don't want to put yourself in the place of some of these characters. But I do think that this is an appropriate one to spend time in lament. I know we've done that on some recent passages, but we're in a dark part of the book, so that it may be a common theme here. But maybe there's something in your life or in the life of someone around you that you need to cry out to God and say, this is not right. Mm-hmm. All right, let's talk about the A in comma. Application. What do we do in light of our messages?
Yeah, my message was, if you want to stop generational sin, you have to speak up. And I made a couple notes here, like no one benefits from silence. The wrong in this case is avenged, but Tamar is not redeemed or restored because no one ever spoke up. No one ever said anything. And I think in our families, there can be generational sin, things that just seem to perpetuate because we do this, don't say anything, just be quiet, don't talk about it. And I have found in my own family, when you pull those things up and you talk about them, you take the power away from them because it's out in the open. Jesus died for our sin and our shame. And I think that there's so much shame that people don't talk about these things. And so for me, an application is to uproot those things, to talk about them, to put them in the open, to make them things that we talk about and we say out loud and we get them out. Like we get so angry about it. It should make us so angry. You read this passage and I hope you feel angry. I hope you feel a sense of anger. And enough anger that you would be willing to look at the places in your own life and in your own family that you need to say, it ends now. It stops now. This does not perpetuate. And I think you have to say it out loud in order to do that. I don't even think it's something that you get to just go in a prayer closet and, I'll just go pray about it. I think it's something you pull up and you uproot and you find, do you need to go talk to a therapist or a pastor or other people in your family? Do you need to have the conversations that say, hey, it ends here? Get your siblings together and say, we're not going to let this perpetuate any further. And actually end it. Or as a parent, maybe that's where you are as a parent. It's like, there's things in your past, or there's even things that you're guilty of in the present that you need to pull up and talk about and have the conversation. And it takes the power away from it. And it gives your children, I think, a clear picture of Jesus. It helps them to see. It helps them, this passage makes us long for the future king, right? I think if we point those things out, it helps our kids and our families to see and to appreciate in a deeper way what Jesus has done for us, what a redeemer looks like, and why it's so important that we have a redeemer. So for me, that application is really like not being afraid to pull those things up and talk about them. Our family does that pretty well, I think. And so I say that saying like our family's pretty good about just saying it out loud, but we come from generations that don't, and that have not, and deeply, I'm first generation, Christian. My parents came to faith after me. My husband comes from a, long line pastors' families and things like that. And so we've had to look at that and say, what are the things that have been buried and kept in silence? Mm-hmm. That if we would just say them out loud, they would lose their power. Like there is no power here. And not just pray about them, but talk about them, use our voices and use our words around them. So
as you're saying that, I would piggyback and say it's true, especially in families, but it's also true in organizations and communities where you say there have been things that have gone on in the past and we have to draw a line and say, we're not going to perpetuate it. Because if you don't, you're probably going to repeat it. Yeah. What was yours?
I mean, mine is so similar to what Courtney was saying. My message was courage and wisdom are necessary qualities of a good leader and a good parent. So my application was pray daily for wisdom, for courage, and then do the hard thing. There are so many parts in Scripture that tells us it's a good thing to pray for wisdom, and God loves to, lavish generously wisdom. But then there's that second piece of like, you can be wise and then still be afraid to do the hard thing. And so there's a challenge here to just, whether you're a leader of an organization, if you're a parent, praying for that wisdom in complex relationships. That if it's not, it might not be a situation with rape. It could be at a lesser degree, but there's wisdom required. But then there's courage that is also required to then go do the hard thing. And so I do want to just take a moment and speak to the dads who are listening to this, because I spent many years as a student pastor, befuddled by how many young men, teenagers, middle school, high school guys who are not having any conversations with their dads about sexual sin. And I'm thinking, if you're out there, you're a dad, like these are conversations that are wise to have, not just once, and it's not giving a talk, it's starting a conversation that happens many, many times. And to have the courage to do that. And you can own your stuff and you can show them your past and say, hey, I've screwed up in this way. But you've got to have the courage to do that, because if you don't, people will suffer, and because of your lack of courage of having those conversations. So you've got to lean in. You've got to do it. Generations to come will benefit from your courage in this season.
Yeah. So my message is that the objectification of women leads to violence. And maybe that sounds like an obvious thing, but I don't think it is for most people who are engaging in the sin of lust or pornography, these sorts of things. It feels like a private thing that maybe you shouldn't do and you want to stop or whatever, but you kind of have this feeling of, well, it's not hurting anybody, but that's an absolute lie, because for a number of reasons. One, the practice of seeing someone as an object for your pleasure, for your use, makes it so that bleeds not just into that moment, but into your other interactions. And you will stop, and it won't just be about the sexual use, it will be about any sort of use of a person for your ends. And that may be physical violence, it may be manipulation, maybe all sorts of things. That is a known link between pornography and other forms of objectification and people's behavior. It also contributes to a society. So you may say, well, this is just my private sin. Well, guess what? That private sin is not private. It never is. There's a reason why it is billions and billions of dollars that go into funneling into this. And it contributes to a world where, in general, women are seen as objects by men because they've been conditioned to do this younger and younger. And it's also been shown that pornography itself gets increasingly violent, that it does not stay with garden variety things. It progresses to places that are really like awful content on awful content that is abusive physically. And so that's well noted. People look at society and do nothing about it. And we have to reckon with the fact that we have created a society of Amnons. And it's because we've objectified women. And so the application is that we got to cut that off in our own lives and in the lives of our community. Like as a church, we cannot be that sort of place. And there are times when to be honest, we could mention this sort of sin every week in a sermon, and it would be applicable to a startling number of people in the room. And the number of times we do mention, which is fairly rare, we get feedback of like, why do you have to talk about that? Why do you bring that up again? And the reality is, this is destroying so many people and it's destroying our world. And when you look at the way people are treated in society, it does not surprise me that this is a contributing factor. So we just have to say, as a church, we are not going to be those sorts of people, and we're going to push back on that. So for that reason, I'm thankful that passages like this expose the reality of our sin so that we can't lie to ourselves about it.
Thanks for hanging out with us. Join us again next Monday for a new episode where we'll be looking at another passage from the Bible Savvy reading schedule. And in the meantime, if you're not following along with the reading plan, check out BibleSavvy.com. Also, you can subscribe and leave a review on whatever platform you're listening or watching on. Email us your questions or suggestions at podcast@BibleSavvy.com. Lastly, tell your friends, and we'll talk to you next week.